Hello, movie lovers! Bob for Bob's Movie Review here, and today I'd like to review for you a movie I recently finally got around to watching, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. If you guys enjoy the video, be sure to show it some love and give it a like rating. So, a lot of people were saying this one wasn't too great, but I wanted to go ahead and check it out, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. This one is rated PG-13 and is directed by Luc Besson, well known for The Fifth Element and Lucy. So this movie, I kind of feel like they had aspirations to turn this into the next Star Wars or Star Trek. And really there was a good shot at it if they hadn't made a few mistakes. So let's talk a little bit about the story. This movie just quickly jumps from like the 1970s to, I don't know if it's like 2150 or 2250. So maybe it's 2250, something like that. So it's in the distant future, and there's kind of like this space station that started just outside of Earth's orbit. And as time rapidly goes on, you know, more countries join and they add on to the station, and they add on to the station, they add on to the station, and then eventually other species, alien life forms come and they join, and it becomes this ginormous city, as they call it. And now it ends up being kind of a risk to Earth that it's in the orbit, I guess because it could crash into the planet or something. They don't really say exactly why, but they decide to move it very far away. And this is why they call it the City of a Thousand Planets, because there's all these different species and stuff living there. And to be honest, like the whole thing kind of reminds me of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where they had that, they had that station out there, and there was just all kinds of different species there. There's like stores and, what have you there. And then there's also kind of like the government, or, the Federation in Deep Space Nine kind of running it. But then there's, all kinds of other things that are happening. Maybe they're not controlling so well. So, there's and towards the beginning, you're already given pretty much the end of the plot of the movie. There's this planet. I don't know I don't remember the name of it was, but the people there, I think they call them the Pearls, and basically their planet is destroyed. And now we fast forward, and we've got our two main characters, Valerian and Alain, and they're kind of like detectives or special agents or something in the government police force or whatever you want to call it, and they are trying to get this little, it almost kind of looks like a lizard dog thing, and it can replicate stuff. So if it eats it, it can just make a whole bunch of copies of it, and they're trying to get it because they're told it's stolen or something, and it's government property and they need to retrieve it. And that's basically what they're trying to do throughout the rest of the movie. So let's get into a few of the characters. First up, we have Major Valerian, played by DeHann. You guys probably know him from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Chronicle, but he was also in A Cure for Wellness and Life After Beth, which you guys may not have seen those. He's just not really a well-established actor or a lead role in movies. I'm sure most of you don't know who he is, and you've probably maybe seen The Amazing Spider-Man. You're not familiar with him. He's not somebody who you would particularly look to lead your new franchise or this big budget blockbuster. He's just not a well-established name. Now, also, he really isn't a good fit for the character. Now, I'm not saying that he's a bad actor or that I don't like him or whatever, but in the movie, he kind of plays like a ladies' man or a lady killer or whatever you want to call him, just a guy who gets a lot of women. And, and I'm not saying he couldn't, I'm just saying when you see him, that's not what you think of at all. And then he's also supposed to be like this big action star, fighting, like a really good fighter, just a really good action star. And again, just looking at him, that's not what you think of at all. So I just feel like, he's really not a good fit for this part. And I believe the movie really suffers from it, because there's a lot of scenes where things are happening and you're just kind of like, oh, come on. He's not believable. And like I say, it's through no fault of his own. I just think it's, it's bad casting in that part. All right, then we have his partner, Sergeant Laureline, who's played by Cara Delevingne. I'm not sure if that's how you say it. You you may have seen her in Suicide Squad. I don't remember her in that movie, and I'm not sure who she played, and I don't think she's really been in a lot else that I've ever heard of. And I think she just suffers from the same problem that she's not known. You know, this is your co-star of your hopeful franchise, or even if they weren't planning to make a franchise, just one-off movie. And she's not well known. Again, I didn't see any. She is more believable in her character. And there were a few moments where I just kind of felt like maybe the acting, it was just not believable. And really, with the whole scenes, the way they were, the music and stuff that went along with them, and they almost wanted it to feel like a dramatic moment. And I was like laughing. I was like, this is so dumb. Why? It's like, come on. So I feel like one of the biggest issues is your star and your co-star are not well known and aren't particularly believable as the characters they are. It could have been a lot different movie if we had some better, more well-established actors who were more believable in their parts. Now, I mean, you can take a risk and go with less known actors. They should at least be believable as the characters, but, you know, I'm not saying it's bad to take a risk, but you may fail. This one also had a few well-known supporting roles, and when I say supporting, I just mean like supporting. It had Clive Owen as, I want to say, Aaron Flint? And he just had a small part. He wasn't in the movie a lot. He ends up being pretty vital to the plot of the movie, but he's just not in it a lot. Also, Rihanna is in this some, and I was kind of surprised that she was going to be in this. Again, just a really small part. She's not in it a lot. She plays a character called Bubble, who's an alien. So she's kind of 50-50, you know, CGI and 50% actually her. So it's kind of like her character, even though it's a small part, it's even a smaller part. And she kind of plays like on Deep Space Nine, the character who was a shapeshifter. She was a shapeshifter. This movie's a ripoff of Deep Space Nine. It also had Ethan Hawke, who again just has a really small part. Now let's talk about the runtime of this movie. 2 hours and 17 minutes, many of which are excruciatingly long. So I did enjoy it. I watched this one time and I fell asleep, and I woke up and I fell asleep, and I woke up and I fell asleep. And every time I would wake up, I'd just be like, oh, this movie is so terrible. But, you know, Tom wanted a review, and I really wanted to get it through a review for him. So I gave it another try, and I was pleasantly surprised my second time, or my actual first time watching it. But, you know, the story is actually pretty enjoyable. There's a lot of cool things happening. The visually, I mean, this movie is stunning. They throw too much at you, though. You're getting introduced to, you know, thousands of species and all these different planets and all these different things happening. It just seems like everything has so many things going on. Like, there's even a scene where he's in a ship chasing after another ship, and then he's like, oh, I can't keep up with this ship. I drop out of this smaller ship, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's just so much. And you really get kind of bombarded with everything that's going on, and you kind of glaze over it all, and you don't really get into any of it, and nothing becomes that important, and you don't really get to know anything. I feel like this movie could have easily been many movies just to be kind of introduced to all this stuff, and instead of just trying to jam pack all this stuff into one really long movie, it just kind of felt like too much, and you don't really get into that stuff. Now, the last thing was the kind of the pearls. You know, this movie ends up being a lot about them, but they're hardly even in it. So it's almost kind of like they want you to sympathize with them and everything, but you don't even really get to know them. And they don't speak English at the beginning of the movie. You're not really sure what's going on with them. And again, you just kind of get this feeling of who cares, you know? And unfortunately, I think just the lack of focus in the plot and the bad casting kind of takes this movie down. And it could have been a lot better. But I think it's a fun movie with an interesting story, and it looks amazing. And it's probably worth checking out. It's just, I wish it was shorter. That would have been, it'd be an easy recommendation if it was shorter. Much shorter, like an hour 45 minutes maybe. I think that would be a much better runtime on this one. But I think I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. It's definitely got its negatives, and it's definitely got its positives. I think if you guys are like fans of sci-fi movies, you know, this one's probably up your alley. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy the review, be sure to leave it a like rating. I always appreciate it. Helps support the channel tremendously. If you haven't already, subscribe for videos. Check out the suggested videos, and I'll see you guys next time.